What a big project this was. I first drew the silhouette for this thing back in May, and I've been thinking about it since. It's physically big, but also a big step towards art in the pearl, as this is the second of 4 projects I need to have in the bag to complete my application. Unlike the chair, the second draft of which you can watch here, I think I have a clear enough idea of what worked and what needs fixing that I can nail this idea in one more go. Draft, then final. That's good, because the third bigness of this project was the cost. The wood alone cost 3 hungry bugs, plus another $150 for the nice hardware. And that's a hefty budget for a draft that isn't guaranteed to sell. Speaking of which, if you like this project, hit the like button, subscribe, or if you're feeling like an awesome friend of the channel, this project, warts and all, is available on my Etsy. Link in the description. Let's see that intro before I say anything more. Alright, so like I said, this project started as a really simple silhouette. For the final version, I was thinking of having it divide in half down the middle to reveal a coat rack, a few drawers, basically making it a big phallic wardrobe. Before I reflect on why I'm not going that route, let's talk about how I did this thing. I'm not going to dwell on the milling, so let's get to the circles, those big circles. I wanted to get the most out of these boards I bought, so I made laths that are about 1.25 inches thick and 2 inches the other way. The wood I chose was campground blue pine, the same as the first draft of the floor chair I made. You can see the video for that here. And I chose the campground blue pine because I can buy it in something like 9/4 thickness, give me a pretty good margin. I can mill down to the final thicknesses I did want, and it's pretty inexpensive as far as clear pine goes, about $4 a board foot. Also has really cool color variation, which you'll see in the final project. Anyway, my idea was to make little ingots and pick the angle and number of bricks such that any weirdness, any inaccuracy in my cutting could be hidden by glue and good clamping pressure. To make the overall shape I had in mind, I need something like 9 rings of 23 bricks each and 14 rings of 24 bricks. Then it gets all weird and taper-y at the top. I really winged it at the top. Word to the wise. This is easy. Take 360 degrees and divide it by the number of bricks you want to make. Set your miter saw to half that number and get cutting. You don't need expensive strap clamps or whatever they're called. I use tie downs. They cost $20 for a 4-pack, that's the red ones you see in the video, versus $20 each for the orange Pony brand clamps. I tried both to be sure I wasn't missing any key features, then once I got the hang of the tie downs, I went all in and got enough to do the whole thing in 2 or 3 rounds. Partway, I made sure to record one of the key steps. Once I have it worked out on my table, I cinch it partway enough to pick it up, then I bring it to the floor and hammer it as flat as I can with a rubber mallet. My tables are touched too small, and the halves aren't quite flush. So I gotta use the floor to make sure these rings are as flat as I can get them. A stitch in time saves 9, know what I'm saying? You're probably noting how ugly these glue drips are on the outside, and I have a plan. I'm gonna tilt my bandsaw a few degrees to get the incline I want, number rings as I go, and gradually build the shape I drew. Clean up the inside I screwed up. As long as the depth is 4 inches, that is 2 rings stacked, I can use a long router bit to pretty it up. I even bought the bit, but I got excited and started gluing before getting the router out. Rings were flying everywhere, I got excited, and I looked up and realized I had built most of the height without doing the inside cleaning uppy thing, so I returned the bit. Now that I've gotten these rings stacked, my only option to clean up the inside and make it halfway presentable, something to bring home to mama, is to invest in an angle grinder. Well, I wanted one of those anyway. I'll show that step later. So we're getting towards the top and I'm really low on wood. I've got to save some to make the record cabinet that's going inside, so I decided to make a more dramatic curve than I had intended to wrap this thing up. The end result gave it a canopic jar kind of vibe, which is great because the variation in the pine color has a desert planet character that I'm happy to lean into. So to the top, I made this one big ring that was like 7 inches thick, and this one pretty ring with something like 36 slices that just fit over that, and that's the top. Lots of thickness to cut away. Now I have my complete rough canopic jar. It's time to put on every piece of protective gear I have and spend a day with my belt sander. The mobile one I inherited from my grandpa. 60 grit sandpaper. The last time I used this, it bit my damn finger, so perhaps I should name it Charlie. If you know, you know. If I had had the angle grinder at this point, it would have gone very fast. You'll get to see how fast once I split it open and do the inside. The outside is smooth, 220 smooth, ready for finish smooth. I threw on 2 coats of boiled linseed oil for the gram, and because more is more when it comes to these penetrating oil finishes, not realizing that not one tape that I have will stick to the wood anymore, thanks to the oil. Whoops. At this point, I really want to save my game. You know why? Because it's perfect. Nothing has gone wrong. This is the point in my gymnastics routine where the crowd is chanting my name, coach is smiling, and the folks at home are thinking, who is this young phenom? And how do I get a t-shirt that says PanthraxManifold LLC? Don't worry, I'll give it the beans in a second and ruin everything. So, I need to split it in half to continue making progress. I can delay no longer. The options considered are track saw, jigsaw, handsaw. I wrote off the jigsaw immediately because in my yearbook, the jigsaw won most likely to bugger up anything you'd expect it to excel at. And that's a superlative it has yet to shake. I actually pulled down the track saw, but that's a lot of power to try balancing on an irregular surface. I tried it for a second and almost shat my pants. Back you go. That left handsaw, which seemed promising at first. I figured it won't hurt me. I can go slow enough that it could leave me a decent edge, and how hard is it to follow a line? Chapter 2. How hard it is to follow a line. I'm embarrassed to say how hard it is to follow a line. On the back side, I made it worse by cutting up to meet my original cut, and goddammit, I missed and there's this freaking notch. This is mortifying. I know that no one is paying me for this project, but the weirdness of the cut ended up being the only technical fault in the whole beautiful thing, so it's pretty glaring to me. I also realized that there was a fourth option that was the best of the bunch. Reciprocating tool. I got mine for $10 as an add-on when I got my jointer, and it would have been perfect for this task. Hindsight is 20 man. Anyway, I now have 2 halves, for better or worse, and I gotta move forward. Now that it can no longer be delayed, I acquire a nice angle grinder, which I cannot praise enough as a time saver. Mine has a clutch and a quick stop brake because I care about safety. Using this sick bird wood grindy head, I remove all the glue from the inside and leave this neat rusticated surface that gives later Michelangelo stone sculpture vibes. Ask an art history major if you don't know what I'm talking about. He's the guy with the nunchucks. The angle grinder is now the 5th way I could have made this cut that upset me so, though I would have had to go get a really skinny cutting head to do it right. Anyway, with the inside surfaced, I briefly considered recutting that horrible line, but laying one half open side down and rocking it back and forth, I realized that the overall variation is on the order of 1 inch, at least, which is a lot of material to remove. I decided to really move on, call it a learning experience and not compromise the circularity of the whole thing for the sake of a straight line. Also, I had already built much of the tower, the record cabinet that goes inside, and losing that much material would likely require a significant rebuild of that whole tower system for it to still be able to fit inside. So for the tower, I just copied a design I made last fall for our own home. You can watch the video of me making that here. But this time with the right tools, more skills, and, this is important, wood that didn't come from Home Depot. It's big. My only bit of advice is that if you have the opportunity to use a table saw to get clean edges on grooves before routering, totally do it. I did, and I was very happy with how well everything snugged up in the end. My last and most annoying task was figuring out how to hang these half shells off their drawer slides in such a way that they open and close nicely, but still come back together in perfect alignment, preferably with a nice clack. I tried 3 different ways, and what I'll say on this front is a really important process note or learning experience. First 2 iterations were improvements on each other. The second one was pretty close, but I had these little blocks in the second iteration that I was screwing into using some scrap ambrosia maple from a previous project. The fit ended up being on the looser side, but close enough that I figured that with some cleverly placed magnets inside the shell, I could get it to snug itself the rest of the way. Wrong. I gave up on that idea as I was screwing in my second pair of magnets and decided to start over with bigger blocks, so that is do a 3rd iteration. Think about the magnets or any of those little fixes as fine tuning. Don't mess around with the fine tune until you've gotten the coarse setting as close as you can. And those little blocks were holding me back. The 3rd iteration I used bigger blocks, and they were much sturdier, and they brought the shells so much closer than the second round that I barely needed the magnets. And then adding those magnets really brought it up to 100%, which was super satisfying. That's my big learning experience. Lesson over. This pretty much catches us up to the present. This wasn't that hard of a project. I felt dialed in for nearly the whole thing, and my perfect wife has already told me all the things I need to do differently to make it better. She wants maple instead of pine, which is the same trajectory for the floor chairing that I made. She also wants it to be bigger, which I'm excited to do because I love a big project. Kind of like Russian military theory, where quantity can have a quality all its own. She also doesn't like that it opens the way it does. It basically doubles its footprint in order to open this way, and you can't commit that much space to records if you have a small living space. So the big maple version it's gonna be different. It's not gonna open sideways like that, unless somebody wants it. If someone wants it open like that, I'll make it. I've figured out the kinks, so I could do that. Instead, I think what I'm gonna do is have a bunch of drawers, and that's gonna be the way I'm gonna present it for Art in the Pearl. Big maple drawers. All right, friends, thanks for coming with me on this trip. This prototype is for sale. Again, warts and all, it's a prototype. So if you want to support the channel in that big kind of way, I bet I could mail this to you. Link in the description to my Etsy, that's where I'll have it posted. And if that's not your style, hit the like button or leave a comment. Tell me what you think about the videos or this project or whatever. Subscribe. Follow me on Instagram for daily project clips if you're the blogging type. I'm trying to be more active on the socials. Anyway, come back soon. I'll be in the garage.